It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Rico Brogna. And for the very first time this season, is it Panic City? A horrible, no good, very bad weekend for the New York Mets as they get swept by the Tampa Bay Rays. And not only did we watch our baseball team get swept, which is bad enough, after the Mets took a 5-1 lead on Friday night, and it felt like a win was in the bag, and after Carlos Mendoza made the decision to pull Clay Holmes and get some work in for Paul Blackburn, the Tampa Bay Rays for the rest of that game, for Saturday and for Sunday, outscored our baseball team 23-4. So it was an ass whooping. It wasn't just the Mets got swept by Tampa Bay, a team that's played pretty good baseball. It was the Mets got smoked, they got assaulted, and they got destroyed in a way in which we haven't seen all year. Number one, they hadn't been swept all year. This is a team that's done a really, really good job of not losing many series. And when they have lost series, it hasn't turned into the disaster that we saw over the weekend. But this was a non-competitive at times bloodbath. So we got a lot to get to. There will be a lot of negatives that come out of breaking down these three games. I will start with a positive, and that positive is the New York Mets own the best record in the National League. Now, that may not last for long, but at least for now, despite 3 straight losses to Tampa Bay, despite a sub-500 record in interleague play, the New York Mets are 45-27. That is a game better than the Chicago Cubs, who are 44-28, and still 2.5 games ahead of Philadelphia, who had a very good weekend against the Toronto Blue Jays. That's the positive. The negative is what we saw over these last 3 days. But I actually want to start with Rafael Devers, because stunningly late on Sunday afternoon, early Sunday evening, after the Red Sox swept the New York Yankees and started to pump up their fans, shockingly, the Red Sox trade Rafael Devers to the San Francisco Giants for 4 players, for Jordan Hicks, who's currently on the IL and had a 6 ERA. Remember, Jordan Hicks was the converted reliever into starter, which has not worked out that well this season. The Red Sox bring him in with a few years remaining on his contract, making about $11 million a year. They bring in Kyle Harrison, a decent young lefty who's pitched to a 4.5 ERA, but he's very young. He's under team control and could potentially slot into the middle of the Red Sox rotation. They acquire an outfielder named James Tibbs. The only thing I know about him is he's the 4th best prospect in the Giants system. And then they acquire Jose Bello, who is a 20-year-old pitcher in rookie ball. The reason I mention all these names, the reason I say that, is because the reaction many Met fans are going to have, rightfully so, is that's the return for Rafael Devers? You're telling me David Stearns couldn't have matched or beaten that offer? The answer is, of course he could have. The Red Sox did not get a lot back for Rafael Devers. I mean, whenever a trade goes down, if you're new to the Rico, you'll know I'll do this a lot. I try to come up with the equivalent. Like, what would the Met equivalent be? And sometimes I say to you, there is no equivalent. The Mets just couldn't match up with an offer like that. For example, a year and a half ago, when the New York Yankees traded for Juan Soto, and there were some Met fans who wanted to trade for Soto. I did not at the time. I didn't think the Mets were in any position to, and I thought, hey, just buy him as a free agent. Turned out to be prophetic about that. But I never thought the Mets could match the package that the Yankees sent to San Diego. This package that Boston got for Rafael Devers, the Mets could have matched easily. With that said, it's not about the package, it's about the contract. Rafael Devers, after this season, has 8 more years on his deal, and he's due to make about $225 million. It averages out to about $27.5 million a year, and he's signed through his age 37 season. And that's the prism and how we have to look at the Devers deal. It's not really what you gave up. It's would you sign him to that contract? So hypothetically, Rafael Devers had his contract voided, and he's a free agent. With David Stearns, with Steve Cohen, would it make sense for this franchise in this moment to sign Rafael Devers to an 8-year, $215 million contract? The answer is no. That's the answer. And the reason the answer is no is not only because the Mets have a lot of internal options, none of which are as good as Devers. I think we know that. No one's saying Vientos is better or Beatty's better or Mauricio's better. We can pray that they'll become better, but they are not. But Devers is a defensive liability. He's a guy that refused to change positions, and you'd have him signed until he's 37 years old, where he's already a DH. And you're talking about a Met team that not only has Soto signed for 15 years, eventually a DH, Lindor signed for a bunch more years, may have to DH more. And yeah, I think there are still some Met fans, maybe the majority, who would like to bring Pete Alonso back. Well, if you give Devers, and this is the way you really have to look at it, if you give Rafael Devers an 8-year, $215 million contract, which is the contract you'd have to inherit from the Boston Red Sox, you're not keeping Pete Alonso. So you're not only giving up whatever you have to give up in this deal, but you're also giving up Pete. You're not signing Pete Alonso to any kind of long-term deal. They may not anyway, if we're being fair. But you rule out that possibility when you bring in Rafael Devers. The San Francisco Giants were desperate. They have tried so hard and so long to add a star, a superstar. Think about all the superstars they've gone after that wouldn't take their money. Well, they got a guy to take their money because he got traded to them. And the Red Sox are not covering a dime. So I think, and by the way, if you disagree with me about this and say, all right, Ev, you're wrong, he's that good of a hitter, I would have taken on the 8 years. Let's have that discussion, but I don't think we should necessarily frame it in terms of, well, Hicks, Harrison, Tibbs, and Bello. Because, of course, the Mets could have beat that deal. But the finances matter. And it's funny, I was going to do a callback on this on the Evan and Tiki show because a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't even do it here on the Rico, but a few weeks ago, or maybe it was longer than that, a few months ago, when Devers refused to move to first base, we played the audio of Devers and his translator basically refusing. And we talked on the air about, hey, if you're the Mets, would you trade for Rafael Devers? And my point on why I didn't want to trade for Rafael Devers is everything I just said. It wasn't about the player. It wasn't about the return. It wasn't about a refusal to give up player A or player B. It was Steve Cohen has a lot of money. But there comes a point where it isn't endless. If it was endless, then sure, bring him in. But the money, to me, is what makes that contract undesirable. As good of a player as he is, he's a tremendous player. But you already have a handful of guys signed to these mega long-term deals, and it would eliminate any possibility of keeping Pete Alonso. So that's my reaction to the Devers deal. Hoff, do you agree with that, or are you mad right now that David Stearns didn't jump feet first into this to trade for Devers?
I mean, listen, it's not the money thing at all to me. I understand it's a ton of money, but again, you could always figure something out. Again, if you need to listen, if you could trade him to the San Francisco Giants, if he doesn't work out, you can always find a way to trade him somewhere else. But what are you giving up? You have a logjam right now at third base between Mauricio, between Vientos, and Beatty. I'm assuming you'd have to give one of those guys up. And right now, I don't know which one you'd want to. I can't tell. They're all so crappy.
well, looking at what Boston got, they probably weren't asking for players like that. They got 3 pitchers in this trade. 3 arms were in this deal, and an outfielder who's in, I think, Double-A is where this James Tibbs is at, or Single-A. So, yeah, we have a logjam of infielders. Based on what the Red Sox got back, I don't think they were even going to ask for that logjam. They were going to ask for different things. And look, I think the Mets could have supplied that. Obviously, they have pitching prospects they could have offered. They've got major league arms they could deal, even though their depth is being tested right now with this injury to Kodai Senga. I really think it's a money thing. And the Giants were always equipped to take that contract on because they've been so aggressive trying to get a superstar, which they have not gotten over the last couple of years.
And here's the other thing, too. Think about it. It's a perfect world for the Red Sox because guess which teams probably would have wanted them? Guess what? Rafael Devers. I bet the Blue Jays would have wanted Rafael Devers. I bet maybe not the Baltimore Orioles, but I'm sure somebody else in the American League.
The Yankees could have used Rafael Devers.
Yeah, exactly. But you push him all the way to the West Coast in the National League. It's basically as far away from the Red Sox as possible.
Even though the Red Sox do play the Giants next weekend. So they're going to see Rafael Devers immediately. But that was the other negative I took out of this. Besides, analyzing if the Mets should have dealt for him, this is another talented American League player moving to our league, to the National League. And let me make this clear, because I know I got in some trash talk with Morash on Friday on Evan and Tiki, and a lot of Met fans and Yankee fans go back at each other about AL versus NL. The Mets' failures against the American League, and they've had it this year, there's no denying it, they are now under 500 against the American League. That doesn't mean anything. I hate to tell you that. It really doesn't. It's good for trash talk. It's good for the back and forth. Like, how have you done against Tampa Bay and Boston and the Yankees? But the reality is, it doesn't matter. Like, the National League is a far more talented league, and it just got more talented. I mean, the San Francisco Giants are a threat right now in the National League West. They're right there with the Dodgers. I mean, they're basically battling it out. They could be battling for a wild card spot. If the Mets lose a few more games, they'll fall into second place. And so a competitor to the New York Mets just got better. That's what happened. A competitor just added Rafael Devers, so that's the negative. Now, the real negative is we just watched our team lose 3 straight games to the Tampa Bay Rays. And there are a lot of goats to rip. This is going to be a very competitive net negative award that we hand out. But let me start with the tone setter for this series, and that was Friday night. Now, you could argue the tone set was actually Thursday afternoon when Kodai Senga gets hurt, and the Mets almost blow a lead. In fact, Dan, a constant contributor to the Rico, kind of nailed it when he wrote, and this is right after game 1. So this is before they got blown out in game 2. Not blown out in game 2, but you know what? It kind of felt like a blowout, and clearly blown out in game 3. Dan writes, 5+ game winning streak, check. Kodai goes down, check. Win the game he gets hurt in, check. Immediately lose the next day, check. 7-11 in the next 3 weeks. Because last year, that's kind of what happened. That Friday night against Atlanta, where Senga got hurt, and I thought they almost blew a lead in that game too, but they held on and won, proceeded to lose the next few games against Atlanta, and they entered a funk. Now, it wasn't a season-defining funk, but they certainly cooled off. So, yeah, that does sort of feel familiar in that Senga gets hurt, they almost blow a game, and look what immediately happens. But go back to Friday night's game, because I'm sitting there on a beautiful Friday night, fireworks night. My son is there. And when the Mets built a 5-1 lead in the top of the 6th inning, and I see Clay Holmes come out of the game, I didn't immediately think they were going to lose by any stretch, but I immediately tweeted, which I don't normally do when I'm at a game with my kid, but I tweeted it out because I was genuinely concerned, which was, is something wrong with Clay Holmes? Now, I don't have an issue with Mendy for not being honest with us prior to a game, because you're not going to announce to the world, hey, oh, by the way, he didn't come out of his last start against Colorado feeling great, so we're going to put a strict pitch count of 85. You're not going to tell Kevin Cash that. You're not going to tell us that. But Clay Holmes coming out of that game after the 5th inning, in which he had retired the hitters in that inning 1, 2, 3, though the last batter, Josh Lowe, just missed a home run hit, went very deep to right field. Clay was in control. Clay was giving you a real quality performance outside of the home run he gave up to Jonathan Aranda. That was it. But when he comes out of that game with a pitch count of 79, and now you see the balancing act that Mendy had of, all right, I want to get Blackburn in, which I didn't have a problem going to Paul Blackburn. It's the 6th inning. You have yourself a 4-run lead. I don't think he's going to immediately put the first 3 guys on base. The problem was this. Here's my issue. And I've said this before about how to manage innings and games. Sometimes the biggest moment and the biggest inning is not the 8th inning, but it could be the 6th inning. So my issue is after Blackburn gives up the 3 straight hits, then he finally gets an out and gives up the 2-run hit to the former Met, Jake Mangum. You take him out, but you have to, in my opinion, go to a higher leverage reliever. You can't go to Max Kranick, who's been in the minor leagues for a month. Because now all of a sudden it's a 5-3 game. There's 2 on, there's 1 out. It's a ball game. If you go to a Reed Garrett or you go to a Waskar Brazaban, who was warming up in this game but never came in, you have a chance to put the fire out in the 6th, fire out in the 7th, and who knows, if your offense scores a few more runs and breaks the game open, maybe then you go to Max Kranick in the 8th inning. So the only issue I had, and I got a lot of emails at the Rico B bitching about going to Blackburn. I don't have a problem going to Paul Blackburn. You have a 5-1 lead in the 6th inning. And there is a margin for error, which we saw. He put 4 guys on base. You took him out of the game. The game wasn't blown at that point. The game got blown by Max Kranick giving up a huge RBI hit to Misner and then the 2-run home run to Danny Jansen. That was the game. That's how the game got blown. Now, Blackburn contributed to it, no question, but you were able to pull him before the game was completely blown. So my issue with Mendy, going back to Friday, obviously I can't bitch about pulling Clay Holmes because at the time I didn't know there was an issue from his last start. None of us did. And once he tells us that, look, he didn't come out of his last start feeling great or however they defined it, we wanted to be careful, go strict 85. It is what it is. Look, one of the concerns moving forward about Clay Holmes is going to be his durability and how many innings he can pitch. He hasn't shown signs of wearing down. Like this was, and obviously looking at the last few starting pitching performances, which were absolutely dreadful by McGill and Canning, this was a really good start by Clay Holmes. 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 run. No issue. So he isn't showing you signs of wearing down, but the Mets are clearly going to be cautious because he's a converted relief pitcher. So no issue saying, hey, didn't feel good coming out of the Colorado start. We're going to keep him at 85. No issue pulling him. No issue going to Blackburn. But once Blackburn puts 4 guys on base of the 5 batters he faces, I think if you're Carlos Mendoza, you need to show just a little bit more urgency in who you're going to. Because Max Kranick let it get away. Now, is that the only issue from Friday night? The momentum-changing loss that the Mets suffered? Absolutely not. Because the Mets did something on Friday which is so unique. It's so rare. How often? Now, maybe we don't count this, but I was counting it on Friday because it was blowing my mind. How many times can you have the bases loaded in a game and not come through with the monster hit? Let's cite how many times the New York Mets loaded up the bases on Friday night. Let's start with the 4th inning, down 1-0. Bases loaded, nobody out. Starling Marte infield hit. Okay, great. Got a run in. Pounded the ball off of Taj Bradley. Now it's 1-1, bases loaded, nobody out. Tyrone Taylor, fielder's choice, ground out. All right, got a run in. Wasn't a disaster, but could have been more. 5th inning, up 2-1. Juan Soto with the bases loaded. Draws a walk. Okay. Again, nothing terrible about that. Got a run in. You're hoping for a bases clearing double, but Juan Soto's got a brilliant eye. He draws a walk. It was actually on 4 pitches. Nothing wrong with that. Here's the killer. And I love Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso had a very rough weekend. And really, if you want to trace it back to Thursday with the throw to Kodai Senga, he's had a very rough 4 days. Bases loaded, nobody out, up 3-1 in the bottom of the 5th inning, and he strikes out. Huge moment. Right after him, Jeff McNeil, bases loaded, 1 out, flies out to left field. Thank God for Starling Marte, who came through with the 2-run single, so at least the Mets do a little bit of damage with the bases loaded. Then in the 7th inning, and this is after the whole Blackburn Kranick meltdown, they load the bases up for Ronnie Mauricio, and he flies out to left field. The Mets had 7 plate appearances with the bases loaded on Friday night, and quite frankly, they didn't do enough damage. That was the moment. You know, sometimes when you have a letdown from your pitching, which was the 6-run 6th inning, you are allowed to have your offense make up for it. And that's why, while we'll spend a lot of time talking about the pitching and the reverse to the regression, if you will, that we may see from the starters, that's to be expected. But what's also to be expected, at least from me, is this offense to pick them up. This is still an offense that, to me, is underachieving. This is still an offense that lacks the big hit. On Friday night, they were 2 for 14 with runners in scoring position. So we could talk all day about Paul Blackburn and all day about Max Kranick and Mendy not using his top relievers, but that offense did dick after the 5th inning. That offense didn't do enough damage with the bases loaded when they attached Bradley on the ropes. They also, and this was the real killer, didn't take advantage of the fact that the Rays played absolute garbage defense. Whether it was Taj Bradley not being able to pick up a baseball in the 4th inning, whether it was Jonathan Aranda not being able to field a ball in the 5th inning, whether it was a dropped pop-up by Cameron Misner that set up the 8th inning and turned into nothing. Like the Tampa Bay Rays on Friday, that's why Friday's game. I wrote it down on the list, that disgusting list of worst losses of the season. That's a bad one. It's not just a bad one because it feels like it's a momentum changer, and the Mets responded by losing 2 more games in a row. We'll see what it turns into against Atlanta and against Philadelphia. But between the bases loaded opportunities, between Paul Blackburn and Max Kranick taking a dump on the mound, and between not taking advantage of Tampa Bay's horrific defense, it was just bad all the way around. And then you can throw in some bad luck. You can throw in some bad luck. When Juan Soto came up in the 8th inning, down by 2 runs, this is after Alvarez hit that fly ball to center that was dropped by Misner, and Lindor struck out and Nimmo struck out. Juan Soto had a chance for a Met moment. Still really hasn't had that Met moment. And he ripped one. And very rarely do I get as fooled as I was on that line drive, because as it explodes off of his bat, I put my arms in the air. I was pumped up. And it just died. And it turned into just a hard hit line drive that was caught by Josh Lowe. And you could look at all the numbers around that ball. It should be a home run, the launch angle, how hard it was hit. It was bad luck. I mean, I could sit here and cite all those numbers. Who cares? It was bad luck. And it was the moment where you knew, all right, this ain't happening. The Mets are not staging some great comeback to win this game, though they did tease you in the 9th inning against Fairbanks when McNeil got a hit and Marte drew a walk, and it was all set up for Brett Beatty, followed by Ronnie Mauricio. But once Ronnie Mauricio fell behind in the count 0-2, you could tell he was cooked. And he struck out looking with the tying runs on base and the winning run at the plate, and it was very indicative of what that game was. As I was leaving Citi Field, probably a half hour after the game ended, because it was fireworks night, and I have noticed people don't stay for fireworks the way they used to. And maybe it's because, I don't know, in 2025, it's easier to see fireworks. I don't know. Maybe it's because the Mets have numerous firework nights per season. Maybe that's the reason. But as firework night was going on, the place was half empty. People left. And the only reason I stayed is because my 8-year-old wanted to see it. I didn't have any interest in the fireworks. But as I was leaving Citi Field that night, and I was pondering what went wrong, like what do I blame for this loss? Fair or not, I was blaming the offense. I was blaming the lack of the big hit. I was blaming the missed opportunities that they had even after the Starling Marte 2-run single, which bailed them out from what would have been an even bigger disaster 5th inning. Like, yeah, we've been spoiled that once they score 5 runs, they should win. But I kept thinking about all the missed opportunities that they had. I want to read a few emails about game 1, and then obviously we'll get to the other games. We'll pick Rico, I'm the Man Now, star of the series, which will be a challenge considering they went 0 for 3. But Pete writes, did the Mets kind of mail it in today? And by today, again, we're talking about Friday's game. It feels like there was no urgency in the response to the comeback the Rays had in the 6th. And the offense just put out their 5 runs and said, that's all we're allowed to give out in a day. Sorry. I'm in a bad mood, so I'm not sure if that's afflicting me. But I found this game infuriating to lose and kind of pissed me off. And I'm pissed with the offense. Please tell me I'm wrong and prove it so I can feel better. No, not the mailing it in part I don't agree with. But the blaming the offense for not being able to come through with all the opportunities in front of them, that I'm with you on. That's the frustrating part. Because, yeah, I did walk away from that game thinking, they left so many chances on the board. And I feel like they've done that all year. And I think the other reason why it bothers me is because we know the starting pitching is not going to pitch to a 2.80 ERA all year long. We all know that. We didn't need two bad starts on Saturday and Sunday to reaffirm that. Anyone with a half a brain knew the Mets were never going to maintain this kind of pitching pace. But the assumption I have, the assumption I've had all season long, is that, hey, don't worry. Once that happens, the offense, if this truly is the team we think they are, this offense will pick them up because this offense has underperformed, which I stand by. To me, this offense should not be scoring 4.6 runs per game. They should be scoring 5 runs per game. And when you look at their inability to get big hits, if they were just 10% better in those situations, I'd be right. And they'd be scoring 5 runs a game. So I do think the frustration lies in not just the offense failing on Friday, but the feeling that the offense is going to need to pick things up as the pitching reverts back to maybe what it should be. And speaking of what the pitching should be, let's get to Saturday's game. This was just a disaster by Tyler McGill. An absolute disaster. And it actually annoyed me when I saw that 3 of the 6 runs he gave up are actually going to be unearned because of an error he made. Keep that in mind. That's another pet peeve I have. If the pitcher makes the error, all the runs should be earned on his record. You want to say it isn't earned for the whatever. For that pitcher, it should be earned. But I don't want to get too nuts about that. What I want to get nuts about was the 4th inning from hell that Tyler McGill put us through. Giving up a home run to Caminero, hitting a batter, giving up a hit. When Tyler Walls lays down that bunt, or Taylor Walls lays down that bunt, McGill can't field it. He gives up a hit to Brandon Lowe. He throws a wild pitch. He gives up a hit to Yandy Diaz. He walks 2 guys in a row. And did Tyler McGill deserve to get booed off the mound? Not based on his track record for this season, but based on the crap that we watched on Saturday. If you were in the building and you stayed through a rain delay, then yeah, I understand booing him. And Tyler McGill is starting to give us the worries. Because if you go back and you look at really his last handful of starts, he hasn't been great. His ERA is almost at 4 now. But this one was worse than the others because it was kind of non-competitive. When you get knocked out in the 4th inning, which is what happened, when you walk back-to-back guys as Mendy is begging you to get one last freaking out to get through that 4th inning, that's a bad one. That's a dud. And what made it worse is that implosion occurred right after the Mets came back and scored 2 runs. Brett Beatty hits the home run. They get an RBI, little dunker by Brandon Nimmo. And so after McGill put them down in a whole 1-0, they score the 2 runs, and immediately Tyler McGill gets his ass kicked. And then we saw, and this is kind of the other worry that comes out of this weekend, the underbelly of the Met bullpen. We never saw Reed Garrett in this series. We never saw Edwin Diaz in this series. We never saw Huascar Brazoban in this series, but we saw the underbelly. We've seen Jose Castillo look very human as of late. He gives up an insurance run. And think about this with Jose Castillo, who also made an error. The Met pitching defense was very bad on Saturday's game. Jose Castillo ended up getting 4 outs. 2 of them were on the bases. 2 of them was Luis Torrens throwing guys out. So Jose Castillo, the one lefty in the Met bullpen, that's going to have to change. One of the surprises, courtesy of the pitching lab, after the Mets picked him up from the Arizona Diamondbacks, his last few starts have been shaky, and that continued in a game in which once they're down 6-2, a game isn't over, but you got to keep it at 6-2. And that didn't happen because he gives up that run in the 5th inning. Jose Butto, who doesn't get charged for any runs, comes in with a runner on first and nobody out and immediately gives up an RBI triple to Yandy Diaz. And he, too, got the benefit of an out on the base paths. That's what I'm talking about with the Tampa Bay Ray team. Give them credit. They won 3 games. Between their garbage defense on Friday, between them running into not 1, not 2, but 3 outs on Saturday and another out they ran into on Sunday, they were giving the Mets outs, And the Mets still couldn't take advantage of it. Now, the Rays made plenty of mistakes this weekend, and that being one of them. But Castillo and Buteau made it worse. And then you got the Met offense. Same story. They score a few runs in the fifth inning, mainly on the Ronnie Mauricio home run and the RBI hit by Brandon Nimmo. So all of a sudden, it's 7-4. You're feeling like, it's a baseball game. You've got yourself 12 outs to work with. And after they give up that eighth run, the Buteau RBI triple I talked about, the Yandy Diaz, what'd the Met offense do from the sixth inning on? They go down 1-2-3 in the sixth. They put a little rally together in the seventh, but Brandon Nimmo grounds out. They put a little rally together in the eighth, but Brett Beatty grounds out. And they go down meekly in the ninth inning. And so the Mets had a chance against Tampa Bay's bullpen because they got Rasmussen, who's had a good year, out of this game after 5. And they couldn't hit Kelly, Sulser, Clevenger, and Englund. Comes back to the offense. They did give up 8 runs, which is awful. And they did get a non-competitive start by Tyler McGill, which is awful. And I talked about the underbelly of the Met bullpen and Jose Castillo and Jose Buteau giving up those 2 runs. But what'd the Met offense do? They did nothing. After the home runs by Beatty and Mauricio, of all people, and the RBI hit by Brandon Nimmo, the Met offense in the last 4 innings did nothing. Couldn't take advantage of Tampa Bay's mistakes. And they put together another kind of blah loss. And then you got Father's Day. I mean, Father's Day was just an ass whooping. Like, there were teases on Friday. There were teases on Saturday. Sunday's game, the one game I did not go to this weekend, so you can't put it all on me. I made the wise decision of not spending my Father's Day at Citi Field. But that was bad. And it was bad from Griffin Canning, his inability to throw strikes, which we saw early on when he walked Aranda and Mangum back-to-back. We saw the wild pitch. We saw confused defense on the bunt by Caballero, where Beatty's heading back towards third base, and Griffin Canning is not near the ball. That was really on Beatty, who immediately charged back to third when the bunt was laid down, and then he gives up the base hit to Danny Jansen. He's throwing wild pitches. He's walking Junior Caminero in the third inning. He's walking 2 more guys in the fifth inning. It was a bad outing by Griffin Canning, and yeah, he's starting to make you question, what is he? What is he? He got off to a great start courtesy of this pitching lab, but now he's put together, I would say, and I want to exonerate him from the Dodger game back in late May. That was the game that got affected by a rain delay. His pitching line wasn't good, 2 2/3 innings, 3 runs. But the real issue is his command has been bad for a while. He walked 4 guys in that Dodger game. He walked 4 guys in the White Sox game. He walked 2 guys in the Washington game. And now in this game, he walks 5 more guys. His command has been a problem. And really over his last, I'd say 5 starts, 3 of the 5 haven't been good. I mean, the outlier was his second start against LA in LA when he threw the 6 scoreless innings. But this outing turns into 4 1/3, 6 runs, 5 walks, his worst outing of the year. His start before that was 5 1/3, 4 runs where he gave up the 2 home runs. The start before that was great against LA, 6 scoreless innings. Start before that was against the White Sox, a dud, 3 innings, 5 runs, 3 earned, 4 walks. And the start before that was that Dodger game where he was affected by the rain, but he walked 4 guys in 2 2/3 innings. So we're starting to see with Griffin Canning, Tyler McGill less so because I think we always knew what Tyler McGill was. We're starting to look now at the back of this rotation and say, okay, what are you? Now we know Kodai Senga is going to be out for a month. We know that Montas and Minaya are on their way back, though both guys have struggled in their rehab starts. I'm not concerned about Sean Minaya. It is still early in his rehab. The Frankie Montas thing is concerning because his outings haven't just been bad. They've been non-competitive bad. And the clock on him is that he only has 1 more rehab start to make. The rules around this is that MLB, with Frankie Montas's permission, or the Mets could ask permission from MLB, with Frankie Montas's permission, to extend his rehab assignment. And maybe that's what it comes down to. Maybe they can find a way to extend it a little bit, but they're going to need him because Tyler McGill may not be long for the rotation world. Griffin Canning is now, we're focusing a little bit more on how much more rope he has. He does have more rope. I'm not ready to pull Canning out of the rotation, but you certainly have to start looking at him with a skeptical eye. And Minaya is probably going to need 2 more rehab starts, maybe 3. So you're looking at a few more weeks with Sean Minaya. So there are arms coming, but what are those arms? Same with Paul Blackburn, who's being reinserted into the rotation. His one start he made was fantastic. He faces the Dodgers and he throws 5 scoreless innings, but his 2 bullpen efforts were atrocious. And one can hope that maybe that's why he struggled, that it's just an adjustment to the bullpen. And now entering the rotation, at least for now, he'll return and at least be solid. But it's been a bad couple of days. Bad couple of days when you give up 17 runs in the last 2 days. And if you include what happened on Friday, especially the 6-run inning that occurred, this is far and away, not even close, the worst pitching series this team has had. In fact, if you go back just to the first 2 games before they gave up the 9 runs on Sunday, they gave up 15 runs in 2 games against Tampa. That's the most runs they've given up in any 2-game stretch this entire season. So this was a beatdown. No other way to put it. They got their absolute doors blown off by a Tampa Bay team that I think is average at best. We'll get to our Rico, I'm the man now star of the series, which is going to be a challenge. Let's get to some of your emails. This is from Michael. Michael writes, "What's up, guys? Crappy weekend. Let's flush it. I'm listening to you guys talk about certain fans freaking out about the Mets not potentially getting Devers. It's not just realistic with the payroll. A couple of weeks ago, I asked you what your thoughts are about acquiring Jarren Duran. He's controllable for another 3 years, I believe. Still wondering, what are your thoughts on Duran, and what do you think the package would look like? I would think it would be Ryan Clifford, Jesus Baez, and add some other prospects. I'd be very interested in Jarren Duran because he fills a hole that I don't think is going to be filled internally this season. Jet Williams is raking in Double-A. I don't know if the Mets are going to pull him up to this level at any point this season. I don't know if they view him comfortably in center field at the major league level. So he's the one guy you look at and you wonder about, but I don't think they're going to fast track him this season. Drew Gilbert has not hit, so I don't think he's on his way to help. And everybody else, the Ronnie Mauricios, the Brett Beatties, the Mark Vientoses, all the other infield options they have, Luis Angel Acuna, they're not playing center field. Even Acuna, who we thought about earlier this season. So I would be interested in Duran. I think the question is, what is the price tag? I think it's going to be really expensive. Very expensive. Now, trying to figure what Boston needs, considering the great young position players they have that have been called up, that's the question. Like, what kind of prospect are they going to look for? I think within reason, I would be interested in Duran. He just fits what they need right now, which is another bat, which is a very solid center fielder, a guy who's a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. And it's not that I want to rephrase that. I don't know if they need another bat, but I don't love their center field situation. Because right now they only have 2 guys that can play center field. One guy, Jeff McNeil, is not a center fielder, and the other guy, Tyrone Taylor, is a 4th outfielder. So they're not really equipped strongly in center field. I do love the controllability of Duran, but keep this in mind if you trade for him. Your outfield is now set for the next 4 or 5 years with Brandon Nimmo in left, Duran in center, and Soto in right. Will Boston deal him? That's the other thing. Let's go to Nick, who has a positive outlook after being swept. Don't we need something like that? Nick writes, "Happy Father's Day to you both. We appreciate it, and happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. My Father's Day was spent at a kid's birthday party and then watching the Mets get swept with my 2 little girls. Even though it was a disappointing series, we as a fan base need to remain calm. The team got dealt a major blow losing Senga, and I'm sure that news had ripple effects through the clubhouse. We know at minimum Pete was feeling down as if it was his fault, which it isn't. The team will bounce back and take it out on the Braves. The theme of this series was death by 1,000 paper cuts. For the most part, there was a lot of soft contact and untimely defensive miscues. I think the team will come back, and while the recent bad outings from Canning and McGill, in my opinion, have now moved from something to watch to something to worry about, we should not be ready to panic. Stearns told us this week that between Montas, Minaya, Tidwell, Sproat, etc., We have a ton of potential starters. The team is too good, and Stearns has shown in the past he isn't afraid to make changes when needed to win. So to all my fellow Met fans, let's relax and not overreact. This is the first sweep of the season. Let's wait to see how the team responds. Nick, we have done this Rico today for about 40 minutes. While I have called out the negatives, I don't think I'm panicking. And if I haven't made that clear, I would tell you I'm not panicking. It is a long-ass baseball season. It is not fun to be swept. It is not fun to be swept at home. It's not fun to be swept by an American League East team. It's not fun to watch the last two games feel non-competitive. It's not fun to watch horrible pitching. But I do agree with you that this team should bounce back. I think they will bounce back. I know we have a lot of fears about our history in Atlanta, and we saw the Braves react very interestingly to this series coming up by pushing Chris Sale back and really throwing the big guns at the Mets. Like, we're going to see Spencer Schwellenbach, who we know gives the Mets fits. We're going to see Chris Sale. We're going to see Spencer Strider, who looked very good in his last start. So we're going to see the best of this Atlanta Brave team. But I do have a confidence, not that the Mets are going to sweep the Braves, but I have a confidence that the Mets are going to at least steady the waters. So I look at a 162-game season in this regard. You're going to have 3 to 4 really good stretches. The Mets have already done that, by the way, if you look at the way this season has broken down. They began the season on a pretty good hot stretch. Then they had a 26-game stretch where they were very average. Then they got real hot till recently, and now they're 0-3 in their last 3 games. What they need to do is play 500 baseball for the next 2 weeks. That's really what they need to do. In fact, to give you the specific numbers on how the extremes of this season has gone, in the first 25 games the Mets played, they went 18-7. In the next 26 games they played, they went 12-14. In the next 18 games they played, they went 15-3. And now they are 0-3. So what they need to do going to Atlanta and going to Philadelphia and then facing those same teams again, specifically the Atlanta Braves again, they got to just maintain. I'd love to see them sweep the Braves. I'd love to see them sweep the Phillies. What they need to do is just kind of right the ship and play 500 baseball into the All-Star break. That's literally my goal. So let's count the amount of games they have going into this All-Star break. They've got 3 in Atlanta. They have 3 in Philadelphia. They have 4 at home against Atlanta. They've got 3 in Pittsburgh. So that gets us to 13 games. They've got 3 at home against Milwaukee, 3 at home against the Yankees. That gets you to 19 games. Then they've got 3 in Baltimore and 3 in Kansas City. So they have 25 games going into the All-Star break. If they could go 13-12 in those 25 games, I feel pretty good. 20 games above 500 going into the All-Star break. And then my goal would be, coming out of the All-Star break, would be that hot streak. They have Cincinnati and they have Anaheim all at Citi Field. Go beat them. Go win 5 out of 6. Go put together another one of those hot streaks. So I think what's really important now for the next week or two, really extended into that break, is to just play 500 baseball. That's all I'm looking for. Well, I'd love to sweep every series and win every series. Right now, you need to just maintain. Their lead in the division has obviously been cut. The Phillies had a great weekend, so it's only down to 2.5 games. But right now, that's what I want to see from this Met team. Now, the Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series. Since we created this award at the beginning of the season, I said sometimes it's going to be really easy. Sometimes it's going to be really tough because there's going to be so many worthy candidates. But eventually, we're going to have a series in which the Mets won't win a game. And picking that Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series is going to be a real challenge. So before I give you the candidates, and there are not many, off the top of your head, have I said to you, who's the Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series? Who would you say?
Ty Adcock. I mean, I'm guessing either that or Clay Holmes, because the 5 innings were effective. He only went 5, but it were effective.
So your options would be Ty Adcock and Clay Holmes.
Yeah.
Fair
That's all I
enough.
got.
Fair
That's
enough.
all I got.
Well, I'm going to read you Jeremy Clausen, who writes, I have a candidate for the I'm the Man Now award. Now, this is before Sunday's game, so they had already lost the first two. They had not played Sunday. His candidate was Justin Garza, eating innings over 2 shutout innings on Friday and then another shutout inning on Saturday, saving Brazaban and Reed Garrett. And I got to tell you, Jeremy makes a great, great point. Like Justin Garza, who got sent down before Sunday's game. So it would be only fitting if we give this award to a guy who's in the minor leagues, who couldn't even survive the weekend. Not his fault, because he had pitched back-to-back days. He wasn't going to be available Sunday. So the thought was get a fresh arm up, which turned out to be Ty Adcock. But it is a great point by Jeremy, because let's think about this. The Mets are losing 7-5 on Friday night. They've used Blackburn and Kranick, who both crapped the bed. Mendy, not knowing, hey, I got 2 more games in this series. I'm not going to waste my top relievers down by 2 runs playing the long game, goes to Justin Garza, who proceeds to throw 2 scoreless innings and give the Met offense a chance to come back on Friday. And we almost did. Juan Soto hit that laser beam line drive, could have tied the game. It wasn't easy for Garza. Put the leadoff man on in the 8th inning, got through it. Put the first 2 guys on in the 9th inning and got through it, including a double play against Caminero. So 2 scoreless on Friday, legitimately keeping that game close and allowing the Mets a chance to come back. Now you go to Saturday's game. It's 8-4 in the 9th inning. I don't think they're going to come back, but he's right. He comes into the game. The Mets aren't wasting another valuable arm. Garza eats it up. Now, it's not Justin Garza's fault that on Sunday, because the offense was so crappy and because Canning was so crappy, that they never needed Brazaban or Garrett or Diaz. But in theory, he's right. So I'm not ready to give him the award. He is an absolute legitimate candidate for Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series, Justin Garza. And it would be tremendous because he's in the minor leagues and there's a chance we'll never see him again.
All right. Now, there's other options, you say?
I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to give you 3 more options, okay?
Okay.
Option number 2 is Clay Holmes. You're right. I mean, he went out there and gave them the best start of the series. 5 innings, 1 run. Unfortunately, he was pulled because of the pitch count stuff that Mendy talked about. They were going to have a hard 85 on him because he didn't come out of the Colorado start feeling great. So, best start of the series, no issue giving it to Clay Holmes. The other guy who I thought was the leader in the clubhouse was Starling Marte. Starling Marte base hit in his first at-bat Friday. Then he gets the infield hit with bases loaded, nobody out, drives in a run to tie the game. Then, with 2 outs in the bases loaded, the following inning in the 5th inning, behind in the count, comes through with a huge 2-run single. So he was the one responsible for driving in 3 of the 5 runs that the Mets scored in that game, in which they lost 7-5. Unfortunately, he came up in a big spot in the 7th inning and struck out. And then the other problem was in Saturday's game, he struck out, grounded into a double play, grounded out, and had a blue pit. So overall, Starling Marte really impacted Friday's game, but I don't know if it's enough. He did have 4 hits, though, which is more hits than I think anybody else.
He did, yeah. No, there was Nimmo, I think, came close with 3, but that was it.
So that's my other candidate, Brandon Nimmo. Brandon had 4 as well. So he took an 0 for 5 on Friday. For whatever reason, Nimmo didn't. I mean, he looked awful on Friday. I don't know what the hell was up with that. Game 2, 3 for 4, drives in 2 runs. And then in the finale of this series, where nobody did anything, he did have a base hit in the 1st inning and stole a base. So he was overall 4 for 13 with 2 RBIs. That's it, though. Like, I'd be stretching to name anybody else as a candidate. Nimmo, Marte, Garza, and Clay Holmes. Now, knowing those are the candidates off, who would you pick of those 4? And I'll tell you who I'm going with.
Again, I said Clay Holmes earlier. I feel like that was pretty solid. But after remembering Starling Marte, he did have a good day on Friday. It was unfortunate the team just crapped the bed. It's not his fault. He did what he was supposed to do. He drove in 3 runs. He put him in a spot to win. So I think that was the closest game right there. Because of that, I would say Starling Marte.
Yeah, I kind of lean towards that. The one negative to me was in the fourth inning, right after the Rays had taken a 6-2 lead on Saturday, he came up and bounced into a double play, and that was a real momentum killer. But it is baseball game. It's a game of failure. And the fact that he was so productive on Friday, and if the Mets don't implode, we're talking about how important that 2-run single was in the fifth inning after the Mets had those back-to-back outs, Alonso's strikeout and the fly out by Jeff McNeil. So as cute as it would be to hand it to Justin Garza, I do think Starling Marte has earned his first Rico, I'm the man now star of the series.
Well deserved, because we couldn't find anybody else.
I told you, these are going to be challenges sometimes, but that's what makes it fun. All right. And it's funny. The most criticism we get in the Rico mailbag is these awards. People take it very, very seriously. Like, you screwed Soto out of this, you screwed Lindor out of that. So I wonder if anybody will be too mad about handing Starling Marte this award. This is his first win of the season. Now let's get to the net negative. Obviously, Tyler McGill is a great option. Obviously, Paul Blackburn is a great option. Griffin Canning is a great option. I'll nominate someone else, and this may surprise you. I got to nominate Pete Alonso. Pete did not have a good weekend. The bases loaded strikeout in the fifth inning was a killer. He did have a double in the opener that led to the Mets scoring their second run, which actually gave them the lead. But then you look at Saturday's game, he does nothing. Then you look at Sunday's game, another big spot he comes up in and comes up empty. It was just that third inning comes up with the bases loaded. He strikes out after the Soto walk. There was a lot of kind of big moments for Pete this weekend, and he came up small in a lot of them. Left a lot of guys on base, had a lot of big at-bats with runners in scoring position that he came up small on. I don't think he should necessarily win this, because I think when you get the kind of garbage pitching the Mets got, it would almost be a disservice to not give it to one of the arms that blew things up. But I do want to acknowledge that Pete had a bad weekend, because he did. You know, and for whatever reason, Sal's texting me all weekend reminding me how crappy Pete's playing. And I'm like, don't we love Pete, Sal? I know you criticize him more than I do, and I love him more than you do, but aren't we rooting for the same goddamn thing?
No, I don't think you guys are. I don't. I know I'm rooting for the same thing as you are. I know that for a fact, dude. I want this guy to be a career Met. I want him to be here for life. Sal has other priorities. He would have preferred Vlad Guerrero Jr. He would have freaking preferred Willy Adames, the great and powerful Willy Adames, to be with the New York Mets right now over Pete Alonso.
Well, he's not. And
yeah,
Pete's here. And the Mets are better when Pete Alonso's performing. He had a bad weekend. He had a very bad weekend. But I kind of lean towards giving this thing to Paul Blackburn. But I kind of don't want to, because the game wasn't blown by Paul Blackburn. You know what I mean? Like, if Kranick does the job, or as I suggested earlier, Mendy goes more high leverage and goes to Brazoban or even Garrett that early in the game, then Paul Blackburn is a footnote. So is it Tyler McGill for getting booed off the mound in the fourth inning? Your vote is for Paul Blackburn, Pete?
And I'll tell you why. Because he pitched 14 pitches. He was throwing beach balls. He was throwing pitches that were extremely hittable. And then afterwards, his excuse. I mean, I'm sorry, but like, I listened to that interview over and over and over all weekend long about him going, I just didn't have a rhythm. I just couldn't get comfortable. I'm sorry, dude. Like, you pitched how many days ago? When was the last game? His last game was what, a week ago? Like last week, Sunday or whatever it was?
He came in another mop-up spot, and he struggled in that game too.
Right. It's like what routine are you looking for? Like, what are you trying to do? You've barely pitched the season, and so far, like, I don't know what you're coming up with, but it's BS. And to me, 14 pitches, you threw batting practice, you blew it. Just own it. Be like, dude, I sucked today. That's what I wanted to hear. He didn't give me that. For that, I think he's full of BS. I wanted to be net negative.
Yeah, no, I get you. I think it's Tyler McGill, the more I think about it, because a couple of things. I don't think Paul Blackburn was the sole arbiter of them losing that game. Like, yes, he sucked. Yes, he was bad. He left the game with a lead. Max Kranick then completely gave it up, including the 2-run home run to Danny Jansen, because even after the game is tied, you haven't given it up completely. So as bad as Blackburn was, I lean towards Tyler McGill. And a part of why I want to give it to Tyler McGill is the Met offense responds to McGill giving up a run in the third inning. Gives up the RBI hit to Josh Lowe. McGill gets through it. They're down 1-0. Immediately, they come back and they tie the game and then take the lead. Brandon Nimmo RBI single. You were up 2-1 in the top of the fourth inning, and you can't get through the inning. You give up a home run. You make a horrible error. You walk 2 guys. You hit a guy. It was awful. And I think the crowd reaction tells you everything you need to know. So I get your issue with Paul Blackburn, but I'm sorry. Tyler McGill, you are the net negative of this 3-game sweep against the Tampa Bay Rays.
Can I try to sell you one more thing with Blackburn or no?
You can try. Go ahead.
Because he basically was a tone setter. You talk about how the crowd, like the Mets were down 1-0. And then all of a sudden they had that comeback in them, and it was 5-1, and they were set to have a great weekend. And instead, Paul Blackburn dumped cold water on it.
I agree.
And that's the tone setter for the rest of the weekend.
I don't think you're wrong. I think that the mood that we were all in, up 5-1 in the top of the 6th inning, was wow. I mean, this is great. 7-game winning streak. Here we go. And it all turned. Now, I don't know how much I believe in momentum, though sometimes it feels that way. Like it does. Hey, we said this at the top of the Rico, the Kodai Senga injury almost blowing the game Thursday. It almost feels like it led to this negative momentum. And the same thing with 5-1 lead, Blackburn and Kranick implode. But why would that have anything to do with Tyler McGill? You know what I mean? Like, and what I'm trying to say is the old adage of momentum is the next day's starting pitcher. It's kind of true. Because if Tyler McGill delivers, then there was no momentum loss from Friday. If Griffin Canning delivers on Sunday, which he didn't do, there's no momentum loss from Friday. So the old adage is true. It leads to questions about the pitching. And, of course, the pitching lab. Charlie writes in, pitching lab. Do we still believe in the pitching lab? Are we sure guys like Castillo, Garza, or Adcock may actually look good, but they're just relievers? And we are now relievers. We know relievers have ups and downs. Canning and McGill just don't look good, confident or comfortable there the last few starts. What has the pitching lab really done? Manaya's always had good stuff. Same with Severino. Do I give a lot of credit to Hefner and Stearns? Of course, but there have been failed projects too, like Adrian Hauser, who's looked great with the White Sox. Hefner's a good coach, but this pitching lab isn't even as good as we want or as the Rays have done over the past decade. Do you really think Montas is going to come into this rotation and pitch like an all-star, or Manaya like last year? I'm not worried about this team or even with the rotation yet. You've always said that the Mets just can't have bad stretches, and they will be a playoff team. That's kind of what I said earlier. Just play 500 ball, you'll be fine. So I pressure the Mets to not let this bad series turn into a bad month. The Mets have a few divisional series coming up, where they can either build a convincing lead and bury the Braves or let the Phillies and Braves take the division over. The Mets need to rebound. I do agree with you. It's very important to rebound, not let this turn into an extended losing streak, something that they've avoided. I don't think you're giving the pitching enough credit. Like, again, the New York Mets came into Sunday's game. This is after giving up the 15 runs in the two previous games with a 2.88 ERA. That is one of the best ERAs they have ever had. And they had that in the middle of June. Now, I got to check what their ERA looks like now after giving up the 9 runs. In fact, I got to look that up right now because I am curious if it's gotten to 3 yet. But I don't think it's fair necessarily to just kind of shortchange what they've accomplished so far this season, because those pitching numbers are really good. Are you ready? The Mets ERA now is 2.97. So it took a major jump by giving up those 9 runs, but it's still sub 3.
It's still best in the league.
It's still the best in baseball, and it's under 3. Now, are we watching it come back to what it should be? Absolutely. Like, they're not finishing with a sub-3 ERA. I think we all knew that. The question is, where is the regression? What is Griffin Canning? What is Tyler McGill? What are some of those arms in the bullpen you talked about? But I don't think it's fair to shortchange it because of these bad few days. With that said, they got a hit. I stand by what I said at the beginning of this season about this team, and I know we are almost at the halfway point. The identity of this team should be their offense. That's what it should be. Now, they got nothing out of Juan Soto and Pete Alonso in this series. Nothing. You know, we haven't mentioned Juan Soto's name a lot. He had a bad luck, very bad luck on Friday with that line drive. No question about it. But Juan Soto went a combined 1 for 10 in this series. 1 for 10. Pete Alonso went 2 for 12. So when Soto and Alonso go a combined 3 for 22 and leave a lot of guys on base, you're in trouble. And that's got to change going into the Atlanta series. So here's what they're facing now with the Atlanta Braves and the Philadelphia Phillies coming up. They are facing Spencer Schwellenbach on Tuesday, Chris Sale on Wednesday, and Spencer Strider on Thursday, all-night games. David Peterson's going to pitch the opener. Big game. You know, I don't want to over-exaggerate games in June, May, or April, but what I usually say about that is there are some games that are just bigger than others. The opener of this series in Atlanta is a big game. They're facing a 3-game losing streak. They're facing a division rival. They're facing a place and a team that's given them fits over the years and a pitcher that's given them fits in Schwellenbach. And David Peterson has, pound for pound been their best pitcher outside of Kodai Senga, who's not walking through that door anytime soon. This is a tone-setting kind of game. So I put a little emphasis on the importance of Tuesday night with David Peterson on the mound. And a part of why I put the emphasis is the next day, Paul Blackburn's going to pitch. So who knows what they're getting out of Paul Blackburn? So Peterson, Blackburn, and then Clay Holmes would wrap up the series in Atlanta, assuming they don't make any changes. It is going to be McGill Friday night in Philly, Canning Saturday night in Philly, and then David Peterson on regular rest on Sunday night in Philadelphia. That's how it lines up for these 6 games against the Braves and the Phillies. And give me 3-3. That's what I would sign for right now. Who would I prefer to beat? I'd probably prefer to beat the Philadelphia Phillies because they're the closest in the division. But losing a series to the Braves would suck too. So you know what? Forget 3-3. I got to get 4-2. I got to win these 2 series. The reality is this is the part of the season now after an incredible hot streak in which they did a great job beating up on bad teams. They did. Nothing wrong with that. They did what they needed to do against the Dodgers, but they also beat the crap out of Colorado. They went 6 for 6 against the Rockies. They went 3 for 3 against the Nationals. They won 2 out of 3 against the White Sox. They did what they had to do. They should never apologize for that. But now it's maintain and play solid baseball. Frankie Montas will get another rehab start. Keep an eye on that one. Another dud, and we may be watching the Mets and Montas petition Major League Baseball to get another rehab start. His rehab schedule expires in 1 week. June 22nd is when he would need to be added to the regular roster. The news on Kodai Senga was very good. It's a grade 1 hamstring strain. So hopefully when he starts being able to do full activities in a few weeks, they won't have to start from scratch in terms of stretching him out. I expect the Mets are going to take their time with him, not because of all the depth that they have, but because they tend to take their time with Kodai Senga. They tend to be very, very careful. But I thought that turned out to be good news. And obviously we keep an eye on Sean Manaea to see when he returns. But not a good weekend, a bad weekend, but deep breath, Met fans. Deep breath. Best record in the National League. Okay? Repeat that out loud. The New York Mets have the best record in the National League. And before you know it, we're going to be able to celebrate. And when you celebrate, whether it's at Citi Field or hanging out in your house or apartment, celebrate your highlights with Mio Sparkling Sake, a true crowd pleaser. light, bubbly, and easy to enjoy. Whether you're at Citi Field or your favorite spot, ask for Mio Sparkling Sake by name, a new tradition served chilled, imported from Japan, the official sake of Rico Brogna. Enjoy responsibly. Do want to remind you, we are going to have a live Rico Brogna from Fanatics Fest. So if you're going to Fanatics Fest, if you're planning on going to Fanatics Fest, maybe you weren't, we are going to be there on Saturday, and our pod will start at 10:30 a.m. So come on down. Well, Saturday morning, Rico Brogna. Of course, we'll broadcast that bad boy live on YouTube. You'll be able to download it wherever you download your podcast if you can't hang out with us. But if you can, come on down. Fanatics Fest is very cool. Had a good time there last year. And we are bringing the Rico Brogna there Saturday, June 21st, 10:30 a.m. So hopefully we will see you there. Hopefully everybody had a very nice Father's Day, and deep breath, okay? Things are going to be okay, I think. Thank you very much for listening and subscribing to another edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.